Welcome to another week of Real Talk Food Safety with Jill and Tia.
Hello, everyone. We are excited to quote unquote see you today because we can't actually see you,
I
but
know.
that's completely fine because we can see your comments.
We can. So, of course, we love when you put comments in because it's great to know you're out there. And we do this so that you join in the conversation with us.
So start by saying hello in the comments and letting us know where are you viewing us from.
I know. It's almost like the standard drill for anything that's virtual anymore, isn't it? Like, hey, where are you located? Share with the group. So,
Exactly. And you guys know that we love talking about weather here because it's just something that it almost sets up your day and helps you get through the day or not get through the day if it's like rainy and dark and you just want to cuddle up on the couch but you have to work. That might slow you down a little bit, but it does impact the way that we work. So we
yeah,
love to talk about that
it's
here.
all energy around us.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
it makes sense because, right, like all of our emotions, all of our feelings, right, it's all energy and chemical reactions. So,
Yes. So please say hello in the comments. Tell us where you are listening from, and then let us know how the weather is.
yeah, absolutely. I was super excited because, like, we had this little glimpse of spring. Think I shared that earlier. And then
Yeah.
yesterday we had like cold, wet rain. It's a skating rink in Minnesota today.
Whew. I cannot imagine it. I can't imagine having ice out there right now because in Baltimore it is, it's not warm, but it's sunny, and I mean, I guess we're in the 40s. But you were telling me that in Baltimore, DC area, that we're going to get pretty warm over the next couple of days.
That's what the national weather forecast people said. So I guess we'll find out. But
Yes, we will. I think it's supposed to actually be warm and rainy, so it's not like we can enjoy outside when it is raining.
true. And today, regardless of how the weather is, we are going to talk about culture.
Yes. It's one of our favorite topics. It's probably one of your favorite topics, or at least a topic that keeps coming up for us. Because food safety culture right now is that buzzword. Everyone is talking about it, right? And trying to figure it out. And we know our audience, and we know you are people that's been in this space for a while. And so we've always kind of talked about it, right? Now it's becoming front of mind, right? Which we love, we're excited about, right? It's like how are we using the data, the tools, the different ways of talking about culture to help push that forward.
And I think, and why? Because the other part that we often get from people is like, okay, we've done the quizzes, we've put together kind of a loose plan. And I think we talked about that before, like when we do it all from a plan to check act or a problem solving or kind of applying the same approach we've done for everything else. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit harder for culture because culture is people.
Yes.
And that's why it's so hard, but that's also why we do it so different here at Catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, right, we want to really show how it is that it's people's like needs and our unmet needs that are really influencing the cultures we have in our workplace.
Yeah, and this topic is so important because people are like, I don't know where to start, right? Like, I don't know where to start about culture. It seems like that mountain is so high.
Mm-hmm.
How do we even what do we even do? And we say start with your people. Start with
Mm-hmm.
understanding what your employees need, what your teams need, what you need
What you need.
as right? As someone that's like leading or in charge of creating this plan or executing it or creating the strategy, like what do you need in order to be successful?
Yeah,
Start there. And so that's what we're talking about.
it is. And I love that today we're going to talk about even kind of like another layer up because, like, what is it that's driving some of the changes and these different needs that we are seeing that also add another element of, I don't know if it's challenge or perspective that we need to understand as we're embarking and improving food safety culture.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So if you are joining us for the first time, we will say hello to you. I'm Tia and this is Jill, and we are the co-founders of Catalyst. And what we do at Catalyst is we really empower technical experts to become technical leaders. And we've been in the food and beverage industry for a while, and we've been in large companies, small companies, medium-sized startups, all the above. And what we really find is when we talk about shifting culture or food safety culture, it's about prioritizing the well-being of their technical people.
Yes.
And we do that through coaching-based development. And so if you are out there, if you follow us on Catalyst, you see that when organizations partner with us, their leaders really develop those tools that they need to take care of their people. We focus on how they become trusted business partners in their organization, and they really start making an impact to their culture and an impact to how their organization looks at food safety and values food safety and work with their technical leaders, right? That's the type of work that we love to do.
We do. And a lot of what we focus on, I mean, it's the human skills. And even if you've ever worked with us and our clients too, right? We all start with mindset and understanding where we are. And I love that because even as we talk about these bigger influences on culture and unmet needs, I think it really goes to part of the mindset. Because like we've talked about, like organizations, like we know we can't go back to pre-pandemic mindset. Like there's no backwards plan. There is no normal. Like it's
right
forward.
We're moving.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And what we see, and we know.
I'm going to share this. Should I share this thing on Mercer?
Yeah, go ahead. Because what we see is like companies are they want to change, right? But they're trying to do things the old way. Or, I mean, we've heard it, right? Like, oh, we've always done it this way. Or why do we have to change? Or, all those things that's resistant to change. But we know that employee needs are changing. And we've talked about this study a lot that Mercer has done because it really outlines what's happening around employee needs.
Yeah. And what I love too is it also shows that we can actually be stuck in one of these, I'm going to call it kind of this loyalty contract. We'll go through this in a moment, but we can be stuck over here because we think we know what our team members want, but we don't. And so we may be trying and hope that makes it all better for people. The answer is not many. But we think we're doing it. And so we think we're moving forward on this scale that we see in front of us, but we're actually not.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that organizations run into is that if they are living, on the scale in this loyalty contract or even in the engagement contract, it used to work.
It did.
Right? That used to be successful. Now we're seeing with people being overworked, people leaving organization, retention issues, that those things, those pizza parties, right? They used to work. Now they don't work. And Mercer did such a great job with their 2022 Inside Employee Minds report, outlining why those things don't work anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, kind of this combination of the shifting. It also gets a little bit of push, like from a very practical standpoint from Gen Zers and millennials, because they have spent their lives watching parents and older people like me try and work and work harder, thinking like, gosh, if I just put in another 20 hours this week, I can make a bigger difference for my company and they'll see all my value. And they're like,
negative.
Right? That's kind of their response. Like that is not part of the well-being contract.
Right. Exactly.
That's this old loyalty contract back here when organization loyalty isn't matching team member loyalty. And that's where part of this is shifted.
Yes. And that's so funny. It reminds me of a time when I was interning in school, and I was at an organization where I came in, like as an intern, you were required to work your 8 hours, but you could not work over that time. So this organization was like, we don't pay overtime. You need to make sure that you clock in and clock out. clock in, clock out. We weren't actually clocking in and clocking out. I don't believe so. But nonetheless, like they did not want you here past your 8 hours. And so that was really important to them. But I remembered I would come into work early in the morning and my boss's boss was there. And then I would leave and they were still there. And so I never actually saw them come to work or leave work. And I remember thinking at the time, like, wow, I do not want to work that much. Like, I don't want to work that much. You know, this boss had small kids, young kids under the age of 2. And I'm like, at the time, I didn't know when I was going to have kids, right? But I'm like, how do you do that? Like, how do you even be here that long with small kids? How do you even, like, I don't see you leave. I don't see you come in. And that was one thing that I thought about. I'm like, I do not want to work like this. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, for people that know me, I am a part of the millennials. I'm like somewhere in the middle of that generation. And even at that moment, because I saw what was happening in front of me, right? Like that was just the way of the culture of this organization. Yes. That I was like, oh, I don't want to do that when I join the workforce.
Right. And look how it influenced you to be like, and that, which is what we see here on Mercer, where you observe that and you're like, that's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny is that even the people that, so my boss that like led the intern, right? He had been in the organization for maybe 3 to 5 years. And all they did was complain about how much they worked, you know? So it's like, they didn't even want to work that much, but felt like they had to because that was the culture of the organization. And it was like, you know what, I'll be here for 7 years and then I'll leave and go somewhere else. And I'm like, I don't ever want to do that. Like, I don't even want to come and like be here for 5 years and then leave and go do something else. So, you know, I think like looking at Mercer's report, it shows that like at one point you could say, you know what, yes, you're going to be here, but we're going to pay you well. Right? Where, you know, you're going to have this amazing contribution to the organization. You're going to have this sense of achievement. So we're going to give you rewards for it. And, you know, you really are we're going to exchange these things. Like it kind of talks about with engagement contract, exchanging rewards for that effort. Like the celebration piece was going to be there. But now this new chapter, right, is around like, how do I have these healthy experiences? Mm-hmm. And how do I have a sustainable performance? And now one of the things that they talked about in the report is that people are not working to live, right? They're living to work. They're working right. So that they can live outside of work. And they want that time outside of work to be even more. You know, we're like now the generations are like the generations of like tiny homes and van life, right? Where people are like, you know what? I just want enough money to be able to live in my van and travel the US. That's a real reality for people.
It is. And, you know, and I think the other part is once again, Gallup does polls on engagement employees. Mm-hmm. Hard to have a lot of progress on that. And sorry, my internet must be unstable today. But part of why we see that is because we want people who are engaged, but yet our organizations or teams may be stuck still in this other space.
Yeah.
And so it creates this environment where in our culture, people aren't engaged because they have unmet needs that we simply aren't meeting.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So we talk about this report. We talk about this change in employee needs all the time. So we wanted to share this with our Real Talk audience so that you can see like these are the type of things that we're talking about, the type of shifts that are happening. And there's data. We're the technical people, right? Like there is data to back that up. That's out there on why we need to start thinking about our culture differently to push it forward.
Yeah. And if you're looking for the full report, just Google like Mercer Wellbeing 2022.
Yes, because it's out there and they have put it out there. And it's just a great tool for you to look at, you know, where, where does my organization need to go? And within the report, they actually offer 6 solutions in their inaction steps. And we really want to focus on 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is stepping up efforts on retention, which we talk about retention often. We know retention is an issue. 2, aligning to shifting workforce needs. So we talked a little bit about that on like, how do you align to that shift? And then number 3, reimagining well-being at work.
Yes. Of course, I love that one.
That's our favorite one, right?
Yeah. But, when we talk about retention, I think, well, we just had a stat recently, and I think it was from Food Engineering Magazine. Have fun. But it was like 58% of food companies are understaffed. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we need to look at there's so many factors, but retention is a really big deal. So it's not just that we're understaffed because we've like made all these new roles. Like,
right.
We have a hard time keeping people.
Yeah, it is. And that is just like, that leads to burnout, right? They even talked about it in the Mercer report, is that one of the factors on employees leaving, right, retention, is just burnout due to that demanding workload. And a lot of it is that we're trying to do a lot, right, in organizations. But if 58% of, 58% is understaffed, like,
woo,
that's like major burnout.
Right. Well, so if we stop, if just from a really practical side, if that's where our culture is at today, we're not going to just take a quiz or do a training on food safety culture and be like, oh, see, we're going to shift behavior.
Right. Yeah.
Like, well, and we don't have the people to shift behavior. And 2, people are still like, I'm back here. I'm still burnt out and my workload is so big. I can't think about how you want me to shift my behavior when I'm treading water.
Yes, that's so important. Like, I want to just like take a moment with that, because that is so important. We try to move things forward, but our people aren't ready. Yes. Right? That's really around people readiness. Your organization can't be ready to move culture forward if they're in the space on like, you know what, I just need to get through my to-do list. I just need to get through what's burning right now. Like, I don't have time to think about like the future and get those plans and figure out strategy, because literally the house is on fire right now. Mm-hmm. You can't think past that if that is your environment.
Yeah, and I think that's where we see it as burnout, but there's always things below that. Mm-hmm. And so we really need to ask more questions about what's going on.
Yes, absolutely.
We know it's workload, but what about the workload, or what other factors are going on? Because sometimes at work, right, we are hesitant to dig into things that happen not only at work, but even maybe outside of work that are making this load feel even heavier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the way to really uncover what's going on is to listen. Mm-hmm. Right? Actively listening, asking the right questions, right? We talk about all the time. And the reason why we know that coaching really is the key to changing your culture is because coaching is specifically designed on asking the right questions. Yeah. And uncovering and discovering, helping other people discover, right? Like, what is going on truly? What is the root cause? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think there's sometimes once again, we could spend a whole episode on this. Okay. But it's just a real high level example. Sometimes I think we have a lot of mental energy that goes into what we do. Mm-hmm. And so even something like, gosh, I have to make a decision and I'm not sure what to do. And I'm not sure I have all the right information. Yeah. Sometimes it just has to be like, do you really need more information, or do you just need to make a decision on the information you have?
Yeah.
And I use that example because I think sometimes for workload, yes, it is big, but we make it even bigger at times. So we really have to dig into what part of workload is making it feel big. What part is making it a burnout situation?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that they mentioned in the report is that, pay is critical, but it doesn't solve everything. And, I was recently talking with a friend who is feeling burnt out in their role. And it's like, yeah, you can give me a bonus or you can pay me more money, but I really just need a week away.
Uh,
Like, I really just need, and not even like a week of vacation. I just need to work remotely for a week so that I can work on my stuff and clear my mind.
mm,
And so, but the organization didn't really want to give her that. And so it's like throwing out pay or throwing out bonuses. Like, I would forego my bonus if I could just have a week to work by myself so that I can feel caught up so I'm not in this burnout situation. And so, like, just hearing that example and hearing that story, it's just, I mean, it was like, this is why pay is not the most important thing all the time. Of
yeah.
course, it's a piece of it, right? Like, we all want to be paid for our work, right? And want to be paid well for it. But it's not the solve to everything.
Yeah. And I think even helping people see that there are other perspectives or possibilities when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Because within our current culture, there will be things, whether it's, you know, spoken or unspoken, that say, here's what you can do or what's available to you. And so part of that unmet need is exploring, like, where did those come from? Do they still serve us?
Mm, yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Do they still serve us?
Yeah,
You
as an
know,
organization, we look at these changing needs from Mercer, and like if we say, nope, we don't allow any hybrid work, is that really going to serve the unmet needs of our team members as we go forward?
right.
I don't know.
That I think that's something that you should uncover, right? Like, if
Mhm.
that's something that the organization needs to focus on, like, uncover, ask those questions, right? And I would even go a step deeper on, like, asking the questions, right? But then also doing something about it and making sure that you're solving the real problem.
Yeah.
Right, like, there's a lot of times, right, that you do your survey and you're like, oh, I don't like this, and the organization puts out a new campaign that they're going to do to close that gap. And you're thinking, man, they really missed the mark here.
Yeah.
That means they did not listen or really uncover what needed to be done.
And you matter. So I think one of the things that we sometimes run into is there's this theory like, well, we can't make everybody happy.
Yeah. Yes.
Why not?
Yeah.
No, seriously, why not? Why can't we come up with win-win solutions that work for everyone? And I'm going
Mm,
to say that's because sometimes as an organization, we're really concerned about maybe the cookie cutter and like this is the process and we can only have one. Or I get, right? We're in a pretty highly regulated area. Sometimes it's even from an HR standpoint, but how do we even challenge some of those perspectives?
yeah.
So, because it's great that we've covered 75% of the people. Well, we still have 25% of the people that are really not doing great.
Hmm.
And then we wonder why we're short staffed or we have retention issues.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I think really that challenge of like, what does that look like?
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's a really good question. Just to ask in general, why not? Why can't we?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm going to challenge and go like, hey, if there are things that we're not able to do for individuals, does that mean like we don't trust them with to be able to manage their time, to manage their workflow, to manage their schedules? If we
Yeah.
can't trust them to do that, why do we trust them to be at work?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And yes, I get we're in food, like food doesn't just magically appear, so we do need people in
Right.
facilities to make food. But I think the challenge that you and I would give people is like, how big can we think? What
Hmm.
parts can we reimagine? And what's going to be coming up later, but like
Yeah.
nothing, I think what we've talked about, like don't leave anything on the table.
Yes. Yes. That is the next action that Mercer kind of talks around efforts around retention is rethink elements of broken work.
Mm.
And I think that's exactly what you're saying on, like, think big, right? Think big, think outside of the box. Like,
Think big,
you
think
know,
small, think everywhere.
exactly. Look at everything, right? Like, how are we engaging with one another? How are we resourcing? How are we structuring our work? And how are we, all the above, right? And it's okay to step outside of what you've been doing, right? Because, like, what you've been doing hasn't been working,
Yes.
right? So how do you think about these different elements of work and really focus on fixing them so that you can retain your talent?
And I'm laughing because I just, this like just triggered two of these like really funny things that people would think, is that really something we should consider? But here's the like level of like detail that sometimes make a difference for people. I remember at a place that I had been where their corporate team got to pick whatever pens they wanted to buy. Great, the
Okay.
supply chain, right?
Okay.
When you went to the facility, they bought them the crappy, cheap pens. You know why? Well, because people kept losing them or going through them. They were crap. So what they always hoped for is that people would bring them new pens because the ones that they bought were so bad.
Oh.
But that sends a message,
Mhm.
right? Something like that. Or toilet paper. I know toilet paper, right? But once again, buying like the cheapest, crappiest toilet
Oh
paper,
my gosh, pet peeve.
right? Right? I mean, but these are the things that people notice where they're like, gee whiz, can't we even invest 2 pennies more for better toilet paper? Because we're
Yes,
here all day.
right. Well, it's a message of we really don't care about this area,
Yeah, and we're
right?
trying to think about how do we retain people? Well, it might not be toilet paper itself, but these little things all add up to tell people like their value and their worth. And if
Yeah.
they're on the fence, that's part of why people leave because they're like, I keep getting these messages that you don't value me.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It's a
Those are
and
real stories, by the way. Seriously, real stories.
wow, the pen situation, like, and I mean, right now, like, think about your organization, and we see it a lot. Like, I mean, we worked in facilities, right? And spent a lot of time of our career in working in a facility, and seeing the way the facility is working and their ways of working versus how they work, and they have the nice pens and they have, you know, but you know what? I've even seen it at the facility side where everyone's trying to save money, and then leadership comes in with new leadership shirts. And it's like, wow, that's a really nice jacket. I thought we were trying to save money.
Yeah.
So it's like just those things to think about as a leader in your organization. Think about how moving culture forward, right? Like just that stopped culture
Yeah.
progression, right? Just that could have knocked back the facility a few steps because leadership decided to buy new jackets.
Yeah. Which I think goes really well into the second one about workforce needs. And I'm going to pull up our hierarchy thing as well.
Yes.
So bear with me as I pull this in and go to the next slide.
Yeah. So we know that workforce needs are shifting, right? Like that's what we've been talking about. And we love
Yeah.
this graphic, right?
And people, you may recognize this as the Maslow's hierarchy of needs
Mm-hmm.
that talked about basic survival needs that move us, from one stage to the next. But this also very much applies at work when it comes to our needs and employee engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we love this description of it because it really relates to the work that we do. But it kind of shows, like, when we think about Mercer's report and the employee needs changing, right? Like, it lines up pretty well with this, where organizations really spent that time at the bottom of the pyramid really supplying those type of needs to the organization, right? Like they're able to, provide you pay so you can go and get these basic needs of food and shelter. We even started seeing things like, oh, there's exercise programs, right, that you kind of built in because we're starting to think about those type of things. You're safe at work, having those type of things in place. That's what organizations have talked about for many, many years. Now they're almost like expectations.
Yes.
And we need to start rising up this pyramid, right?
Yeah, because I think that's the whole well-being lifestyle contract is we're looking at as humans, how do we move further up to have more purpose, to have our work be to make bigger contributions, to have a bigger impact. And that means we want to be up like belonging needs and or higher.
Yeah. Yes.
And when we think about organizations where are we recognizing that things are shifting and we want to move higher up? So that means, like you said, some of those base layers, like those are often unspoken expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we are missing some of those because we're not able to really ask and listen to what the unmet needs are, we're not going to create an environment or in a culture where our team members can move up to be more engaged and have the food safety culture we want, because they're still down here going, yep, I'm not sure if I have a job tomorrow. I'm not sure how many hours I'm working today. I'm not sure what I'm actually doing here.
Yeah.
Um, I think we talked about it, even was it earlier this week or last week, where that people need to know the ground we're standing on is stable.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it can't shift elevations, but when it's rocky and
Mm-hmm.
always shifting, the perception that, well, life always changes and you should just be ready and expect the unexpected. There is some truth to that. But that's very different than having people feel ungrounded.
Right. Yes.
And I
Yes.
think there's a big difference that we need to understand, because a lot of what we see when it's like a takeover, a layoff, all of those things, like we instantly go back down on this chart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. That's because we've been seeing so much unsteadiness in many industries, right, over the last few years. Like,
Mhm.
we don't realize, or we haven't said enough, that every time that happens, we fall down
Yeah.
that pyramid. And like, to your point, it's like you can't build on unsteady ground.
No,
You can build
no.
on a hill, you can build on um
An incline, whatever, right? But
but you cannot build on unsteady ground and think you're going to live in that house while the ground is moving,
yeah.
right?
And I think sometimes we confuse continuous improvement and feeling grounded and steady,
Yeah.
because even continuous improvement actually lives higher up on this model, like belonging, like
Mm-hmm.
where people are making additional contributions to what they're doing.
Right.
That is not an element of like at the ground. That's like
Right.
ground needs to be stable before I'm able to actually participate fully,
Mm-hmm.
embrace, and really live continuous improvement and improving food safety culture.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, if you are at this point and you're thinking about your culture and you really need to understand the top concerns around your workforce and what those needs are, one of the actions is to diagnose what they are, right? Like,
Mm.
have those conversations, talk with your people. And one big thing that was in the data is that they said that organizations cannot rely on historical data to prioritize solutions. I
Mm.
thought that was so impactful because it goes back to like, oh, well, we've always done this, or this is how we've always celebrated, or this is how we've always recognized people. This is how we've tried to do in the past, this belonging, and it's not working. And you can't use historical data because things are different now. You're in a different contract where the things that happened before, in the loyalty contract or in the engagement contract, those things are no longer fulfilling.
Yeah, they're not valid anymore. I mean, they are, but they're the unspoken expectations. So
Right.
even if we looked at, oh, I wish I had Kano model here, right? Kano model about expectation shows there's a big part. Food safety in Kano model is an unspoken expectation.
Right. Yes.
Nobody says, I'm going to buy the safe food. It's expected.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing
Mm-hmm.
kind of applies when we think about work. Like there's some things that we don't always talk about, but there's still expectations.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. I think that this goes into another action that they talked about is employees prioritizing employee support.
Mm.
And the reason why they say to prioritize it is because a lot of that is expected, right? Like, people expect for their organizations to provide them with the right type of development for their role or to move into other roles, right? And it's one of those things when you think about culture, right? And the culture you want to get to or the culture you need to get to, it is expected when I go into an organization or when a person enters an organization that you care about culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're going to care about me and that you're going to care about my development. And if employers are not shifting in that direction or prioritizing that, you're going to see retention issues.
Yeah. And I really think about like how do we challenge organizations to think once again, like you said, past what we've used before. So
Hmm.
for a long time, right, there were kind of like employee resource lines that you can call, and those are still great. It doesn't mean take that stuff away,
Yeah.
but what other support are team members looking for? What are the other unmet needs that they maybe need instead of having to make a call or go online, like the human to human, right? That's
Yes.
this is the intersection of culture. It's people to people. And so
Absolutely.
even though surveys or past data may give us some insights on maybe where to start asking questions, it's still this conversation that we need to have.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's about conversations. It's about asking questions. It's about listening. It's
Yeah.
about coaching. It's about coaching, right?
Well, I know we're completely biased, but that's the right. As coaches, our goal is to ask questions, to have people dig deep. Like,
Hmm.
what is it I need? Because on a regular basis, people are not actually connected very well to their needs
Hmm.
because we've always been told, okay, it's a whole nother aspect. We've always been told, like, this is what you should want, or this is what you get. And so sometimes we really need to be really mindful that we're approaching asking questions and looking for needs in a different way that
Hmm.
really asks people to be curious, explore, and they need to better connect with that often.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that goes into the number three of reimagining
Mm,
well-being at work. Because what well-being means to me is different than what it means to you. Is different than what it means to you listening to us today.
mhm.
And it's important as an organization, as a leader, as someone that's trying to build culture, right? It's so important that you understand what does well-being mean to each of your people
Yeah.
and to yourself.
Yeah, and I think, kind of going back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, it doesn't mean just cover the first 75% or
Hmm.
something. I usually use Pareto 80/20. But this is part of that plan,
Yeah.
right? So it's also letting people know like we're not excluding you, we're not forgetting about you. We're maybe
Right.
doing step 1 because of this, we're doing step 2 because of that. But we're going to
Mhm.
also reimagine work and how we do the continuous loop, a plan, do, check, act,
Yeah.
even on how we're reimagining and engaging our team members to understand what well-being means to them.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love it that you brought up PDCA because like we're technical people, right? And we understand those processes like
Mhm.
we have to, and that's why we love this intersection between technical and people. Because like we have such a unique situation that we understand processes. We understand problem solving. We understand root cause analysis. We understand this whole technical piece. If we add this people side to it, then it's like, wow, right? Like we're really able to get down. Like when they talk about like get to the root cause, we know how to do that, right? Like we know how to get to the root cause. We have plenty of tools that will help us get there. When we add the people element in it, then we really are diving deep into what does it mean for me to protect the well-being of this person, of my team, of the organization, of our culture. And then
Mhm.
how can I develop action steps that will actually solve that issue and continue right to check on it and
Mhm.
check on it and act on it, right? We have the processes, we have the knowledge, we just need to add that people component to it.
We do. And I think even, right, like if you had asked me this 10, 15 years ago when I was, actively working in corporate America with teams, like, well, how are you going to do this? And I'd be like, well, I'm going to ask this, this, and this. I Googled it and I found 3 questions I can ask and away I go.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I always love getting older and wiser because so often we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wouldn't have recognized back then is I hadn't shifted like creating a safer space for my team members to lean in and tell me more about these questions or these answers that I was looking for. I wasn't
Yes.
always necessarily inviting them to be curious and explore,
Mm-hmm.
or I was using probably some judgments or predefined criteria or factors that I would have thought, or maybe the company thought,
Yes.
as I was engaging in these conversations. So yes, it was a little bit different, but there's so many other parts that go around it that
Yeah.
having that as a consideration is part of that reimagining work. Like, can
Mm-hmm.
we reimagine how we show up differently and more authentically, and
Yeah.
how that creates space for others to come more authentically and share their voice and their needs?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And, we talk about that in boot camp, right?
Mhm.
Because it's so important to create that space, because otherwise you're not going to be able to determine the root cause. You're not going to be
Mhm.
able to uncover that because people don't feel comfortable talking
Mhm.
to you as a leader, or you as even a coworker, right? Or you as a CEO or a VP of food safety and quality, right? Like, in order for you as someone that's responsible for strategy of an organization, right? I'm talking to you that's listening, right? Like, you have to be able to get this information from people. And so creating those safe spaces, building those relationships, right? Being authentic to who you are is all about building trust, right? And all about opening up these spaces so that you will know, like, what is really going on. I think another piece of that is, like, as you uncover what the root causes are, it's so important for you to actually address them.
Mhm.
Address what's burning out your people. Address what is making them leave, right? It's one thing to know what they are because people have told you. It's another thing to actually address that problem. And that is one of the best ways, right, to move culture forward, is to address that problem, specifically around burnout, because that's exactly what people are seeing.
Mhm. And, I think it's also keeping in mind, right? Exit interviews are
Mm.
likely not the place you're going to get the best, most valuable information on what's going wrong.
Oh, yes. Oh, the exit interviews.
Right. I mean, it's the questions asking people like who are here, like, gosh, if you were going to leave, why would you be leaving us?
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Right. What
Yeah.
is it that keeps you here? So there's different things, like you said. I mean, we have to fix things, but we also have to make sure we're extracting or understanding that information. Once again, safe spaces,
Hmm.
culture that allows for it, asking the right questions.
Yeah. If you're given an exit interview and you hear something in the exit interview that you didn't already know, like, it's too late.
Hmm.
Like, you're asking those questions too late. How do
Mhm.
you really have a process, right? That you're asking these questions early and often of the people
Yeah.
that are there, because those are the people, right, that you need to influence. Those are the people that you need to inspire to push your culture forward. If someone's already out the door, at that point they're not a part of your culture anyway. So what they're saying could definitely be of some benefit, but how much work are you going to put into it if Tia's telling you these things and Tia's not even here the next day, right? Like,
Yeah.
you need to know what Jill's thinking, because Jill's the one that's actually working
Yeah. And I think the other part is that we always think about, like, right, how many times have we been told don't burn bridges?
there. Mm-hmm.
And the like, it's still something that, I mean, I'm still learning every day. Clear and kind,
Yeah.
but being truthful so that I'm being helpful.
Yes.
And there is so much more to that than that meets the eye. So if you're also asking people as they leave, or you haven't created a safe space to say, like, hey, if you did, why would you?
Yeah.
Like, they're gonna not give you the full information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. It
just
starts with
so
that safe
valuable.
spaces,
Yeah.
right? It starts with, how do you create this safe space? Because exactly what you're talking about. If you don't have that safe space anyway, and that person is leaving, they're probably not going to share what they need to share, right?
Yes. So it's gonna be hard to reimagine work when we're kind of stuck in these old habits.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that they talked about around being burnout, right? It's we know is reducing workload.
Mhm.
So helping, um, really finding out ways that you as an organization or you as a leader can help, like, what's creating this unstable or unsustainable workload, right, for your people, and what's causing them to be burnt out. Is it lack of resources? Is it, I need more training, right? Like maybe I don't have the technical background that I really need. Or do I need support in terms of coaching or leadership development? Like, what are those things? Do you need to reorganize your organization because really the structure of how you get work done is not optimal?
Right.
All of those things you really need to understand in order to push your culture forward and to prevent burnout.
Yeah, and I think part of that too as a leader, I think sometimes we feel the pressure, especially as middle managers, that above us is like just get these things done.
Yes. Yes.
And it's also our responsibility to politely say no. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not a no never, but I think like we said, yes, I can get that done if I have additional resources or in 6 months or when something happens. But it is hard. I've been there. Tia's been there when they're
Mm-hmm.
like just piling more on and you have to be able to stop and go, look, we're not going to get all this done.
Yeah.
Like I want you to seriously know it's not all getting done because we're on 1, 2, and 3. That's
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And asking the question, okay, I see this list of things. I know we don't want to add another head count, right? Because we've had that conversation. What would you like for me to prioritize?
Yeah.
Right? You know, like you're right. I've been in the situation where I was a team of one and it had been communicated to the organization that this is really a five person job, right? Like a team of 5 people to do it. And so when it's only me, I needed to communicate, I agree. All of these are open risk for us. But we don't have the right size team.
Mm-hmm.
What would we like to focus on, knowing that we just have one person?
Yeah. And that really goes into the well-being because once again, when we're carrying that load, it's hard to imagine, it's hard to reimagine what well-being looks like when we're not willing to look at other options for things that we know come up over and over and over in terms of what stands in the way of helping us shift culture when we're still in the, I'm going to call it the treading water stage.
Yes, yes. And we get it, right? Like organizations are looking to be lean, right? Like we've had a tough 2-3 years, right?
Yeah.
Like unlike anything we've seen before, right? So this need shift is also happening, during COVID. The COVID was a part of that shift, right? It's a part of speeding up that shift to this well-being stage. And so like knowing that we're trying to be lean, we're trying to bounce back as organizations, we have this focus. We know that not moving our culture forward or continuing to have to hire and train people and onboard people is not optimal work. And it's actually costing the organization so much more money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in our best benefit to right size our organization and ensure we have the right talent and making sure that that talent is focusing on the right priorities and the right initiatives. That is what's going to drive out inefficiencies. And we all know inefficiencies cost money and time, right? So like when I'm thinking about, okay, what are my cost savings? How do I become lean, right? Being lean means that you have those critical roles. It doesn't mean that, 58% of people are understaffed. That's not actually lean. Being lean, you want to make sure that you have your actual critical roles, not that you have no one.
Yeah, and I think that goes back all to kind of like we talked about, right? The broader picture here is that employee needs are shifting. And the engagement, the hierarchy with the pyramid, definitely shows that if we're not able to pause and look to see where are people really on this scale, they may not be ready for any type of culture shift.
Yeah.
And in fact, part of as we're looking at food safety culture, maybe we are establishing base unmet needs for team members.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be the starting point because I can't be thinking about, joining the next continuous improvement project or looking at my KPIs all the time that are on the board flashing in front of me or caring about them, or even some of the relationship building that I need to do if I'm constantly feeling like I have all these unmet needs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think today our goal really was to help demonstrate that it's not just like it's not just putting the quiz in place. It's not just putting a plan in place.
Yeah.
There are these factors that are really influencing culture. And with that, though, I still want to always reiterate that the someone you're looking for is you.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think sometimes this can be daunting, like, oh, it's so big.
Yes.
I can't do this alone. And you're right, you can't do it all alone. But you are still able, worthy, and we need you to
Yeah.
start shifting in these places as well.
Mm-hmm. And making small shifts, right?
Mhm.
Like little by little, because culture change takes a long time.
Mhm.
And we know, like, you don't have to do this alone,
No.
right? Like, this is why we are in this space, is because, like, we've been there where we felt like we were the only one on the island and that we were carrying this heavy load, right? Like, there, find people to help you. You have us, right? Like, of course we are a resource to you, but
Yeah.
find a partner to support you.
Yeah. And it starts with you. Wasn't it earlier today, Tia? I was telling you about, like, oh my gosh, I'm a little stressed about something. And I was like, guess what? The only one feeling that stress is me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
creating my own stress. And so if I can choose ease and flow, ugh, all those stress hormones and chemical reactions pause and I can actually think and do.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
say that because as I'm looking for someone to help me reduce the stress or some factor out there, like it really was me.
Yeah.
And even that is so extremely powerful. And I think sometimes we don't recognize that our mindset and us moving in this direction
Mhm.
can have an enormous impact on how we're feeling and the energy that we're bringing to work every day.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one other takeaway I would say from today's conversation is to get people involved. Think about people, uncover the root causes of your employees, of your team. Why are they burnt out? Why are you not retaining your employees? Why are
Mhm.
you, why, what are your barriers to pushing culture forward? And it's something that we do as we help organizations build their food safety culture plans, right? Like, we always start with having that people conversation. And it, in any case, so our clients would know, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you've already taken a survey, you take a survey every year or every 18 months, or you have 5 years worth of data, or you have a year worth of data, or no data, right? Like, our goal is to talk with people and understand, where are people? Are those
Mhm.
results really what's happening, right? And the
Mhm.
only way to do that is to have conversations, different conversations. And so as you're thinking about building your food safety culture plans, which we know is on a lot of people's minds, start with people.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even like Google the Mercer report, print off that little chart we showed you, and share it at work. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're somewhere in a physical location, put it up and see what comments people have.
Yeah.
Talk about it in a meeting. Like, gosh, I saw this really interesting thing, and it really had me thinking about X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always some little step that you can take to start moving in that direction and getting others involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a huge piece is people readiness. So, how
Mhm.
can you get your people ready for this culture shift?
Yeah. Whew. All right. I know
Yes,
we could talk about this all day
we can,
and
but
other aspects of it.
we can, and I'm sure we are going to. And if you love this conversation today, or if there's pieces you want us to dig into a little bit more, like, put it in the comments, because we do take suggestions, of course, from you all, and we want to talk about the things that are on your mind. So please add that in the comments. But we really wanted to take today to just talk a little bit about the data behind why we do what we do, and that support, right? Like, those shift in needs and how to think about it differently, even at your organization.
Absolutely. So thank you to everyone for being here, for showing up for you, for showing up for the other people so that you can all be part of the conversation together.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
if you haven't already, if you're wondering, how do I make sure I don't miss one of these episodes? Go follow our LinkedIn page.
Yes.
Yep, just
Yes.
click that little thing because that way, then every time we announce another event or it goes live, you're going to get notified right away.
Yes. Absolutely. And we love having you a part of our community.
Yes, we do.
So please make sure that you are staying close to us, and we're always available for you.
Absolutely. So we'll be back here next week, same time, same place for another Real Talk Food Safety.
All right. See you all next week.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.